I've had my Tesla since 2013.
Right.
And it never dawned on me where the lithium in the battery came from.
This is the point.
Until I stepped foot into Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia. And I'm on this tour, and my tour guide tells me, did you know this is the world's largest lithium reserve? And I was just like, oh my God.
Wow. And so you weren't there because of lithium. You were there as a tourist, or was that what you were just?
Yeah, as a tourist.
Right. Wow. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged Plus podcast. What is great about this experience for me, and I'm really hoping for you as well, is that I get to meet, as I say many times, some amazing people, but occasionally I get to meet some really amazing people who are doing such important things. So today's guest is a man called Teague. He's American. I got all confused when I first got through to him to record this, because he said, I'm in Turkey. So I went, have I got this guy mixed up with someone else? Who's the guy in Turkey? And he was in Turkey because he is developing this technology, and he's going around the world talking to various companies about it. He's just been in the Netherlands. He'll explain. He's going to Dubai after this, and he's back in America. Teague is the CEO and founder of Energy X, which is a company that I will let him explain about. But essentially, they have developed a way of extracting lithium from the salts that it resides in using far less energy. It's much quicker, and it's massively cheaper than the way that we do it currently. And they're just about to really scale this business up. And so he's clearly quite a clever chap. And he was just charming with me because I was in a right old fluster when we first started. Like, once we got into the topic, I got very enthusiastic about it, as I sometimes do. But I think this is really worth investigating further. There'll be links to EnergyX's website underneath in the show notes for this video. But I think if you Google EnergyX, you'll find it very quickly, because it's really remarkable stuff. So it is slightly inside baseball in terms of electric vehicles and batteries. It's really about the materials, but you'll find out at the end why what the process they're developing is really central and critically important in our battery-supported future. So before we start, let's have a quick word from our fabulous sponsors who make this podcast possible to come to you every week for free. My Energy is putting the I back into British innovation. My Energy is putting the I back into inventing the future. My Energy is putting the I back into inspiring a nation. Recharging the world with green, smart energy. Charge your EV with your PV and more. Visit myenergy.com and help to spark the green revolution. My Energy, driving the charge to a greener future. So thank you to our wonderful sponsors. It's really great that we get this support to make this podcast, because it is I think really great. This is going off the scale. The number of people who listen to this is very exciting. Please do tell your friends. Do the old subscribe thing, please. If you want to, don't have to. No pressure. A bit of emotional pressure from me, but ignore that. Let's stop the waffling and get straight down to a wonderful conversation. Please welcome Mr. Teague Egan. So, Teague, thank you very much for doing this. This is going to be really interesting for me.
Nice. Thanks for having me, Robert.
No, that's great. No, it's really good. So first of all, you're in Turkey, which I'm confused at because you have a very pure American accent. So can you explain why you're in Turkey and what's going on there?
I don't live in Turkey. I'm just traveling right now.
You're traveling in Turkey.
Yeah. I was just in the Netherlands doing some factory acceptance tests for some of our pilot machinery, and then I'm headed to Dubai.
Wow.
So I came to Turkey for the weekend and was in Istanbul and Cappadocia.
Very nice. Wow. So when the whole of, as far as we're concerned, the whole of the world is 100% locked down, no one's going anywhere, You're doing all right.
Yeah, at this point, I'm a expert at PCR testing.
I bet. Yes. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, so we're focused on DLE, or direct lithium extraction.
Right.
And we use membranes to do that. So lithium is found in highly concentrated salt brines. And, these brines are typically found in South America.
Yeah.
However, there are some resources in the United States. And they're very salty brines. So they can have like 30 to 40% of the entire solution is salt.
Is salt, right.
And of that salt, a percentage is lithium. Usually a small percentage, like 0.1 or 0.2%.
Oh, right, really small percentage, right.
But that's actually very high in terms of what it could be in other places. It could be 0.005 in other places, right? So the idea is getting this lithium out of this salt brine, right? And that's really where the majority of the world's lithium comes from for all of the batteries in electric vehicles, in electronics. And right now, the way that they extract that lithium from the brine is they pump it out from underground, and then they put it into these massive evaporation ponds.
Yeah.
And they let the sun evaporate the H2O out, and then the salts kind of crash out one by one, depending on how long it's been in this sequence of ponds.
Right.
And I saw this and I said, there has to be a better way to do this.
Yeah.
We have pretty advanced membrane technology to create fresh water out of ocean water.
Yeah.
Kind of like desalination and using reverse osmosis.
I just want to quickly say I've made a TV show about reverse osmosis. So they made me drink my own urine.
Oh.
But it went through. It was it was perfectly all right. I could tell it wasn't, but it was kind of they wouldn't let me cheat.
Yeah, you got to send me that. I want to watch it.
That's horrible.
So you understand
that basic principle, yeah.
The sophistication of membranes, and the amazing phenomenons that they can create, right? I said, why can't we use membranes to separate out just the lithium out of this soup of different salts?
Yeah.
And that's basically what we do. We use membranes as a filtration mechanism to mechanically separate the lithium out from
the salt. So you can actually literally, so at the end of the process, then you've just got lithium. You haven't got lithium with a bit of salt or salt with a bit of lithium. You've got lithium.
Lithium is a salt.
Yeah.
Right. So basically in the salt brine, naturally, you have lithium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, calcium, all these different salts, right? And the idea is, how do we just let the lithium pass through the membranes and reject everything else so that it's purified lithium solution, and then you crystallize that into the products that go into batteries. Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of the impact, because, I mean, that's the big debate that's going on now, which I always think is slightly amusing. That for the last 150 years, it's been absolutely fine to go and drill for oil, trash the place that you're drilling for oil, leave it. There's an amazing court case going on in Colorado at the moment. I've just been reading where an oil company's just gone, we're finished here. They move out. They keep a company going, which then is deliberately designed to go bankrupt, so to clear it. And it's a toxic filth that they've left on the ground. They can't use the drinking water. The cattle can't drink the water that's from near it. All those normal stories. That's normal. We're used to that. And then suddenly everyone's getting het up about, what about all the lithium extraction and the cobalt from, you're going, yeah, all right, we need to do this properly. But let's remember what we have been doing for the last 150 years is a lot worse. But is the overall impact then would you say is less of an impact? Because if you haven't got to have massive salt drying pans in the middle of the Chilean desert, and you can have one unit that is extracting that material, that sounds like a better way of doing it.
Way better way. Yeah. Orders of magnitude. I mean, so what we realized in our approach to market is that ultimately that's the goal, is to eliminate the evaporation ponds, because these things are huge, tens of square miles. But initially, what we realized is that we need to work with the evaporation ponds, because these big companies have already spent lots of money on them, huge capital expenditures, and we need to complement the existing systems before we just replace them. So it's kind of like a staged approach.
Right. And I mean, can I also, because you all know this, that it's not like there isn't enough lithium on the planet.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of it, but it's just where it is and how hard it is to get.
Exactly. And how concentrated it is. So like there's lithium in the ocean, but it's like 1 part per million, maybe even into the parts per billion.
Right.
And that's unextractable. It's
right.
So in South America, highly concentrated is considered 1,000 to 1,500 parts per million.
Right.
So that's 0.1% of total solution is lithium, and that's considered an absolute run.
Right. That is extraordinary, isn't it? It is, and I mean, so have you? Presumably, you've had interest from battery manufacturers and a lot of people involved in this because it's such an exciting and rapidly changing and growing industry, isn't it? I mean,
we're in the first inning right now.
You're in the what? Sorry,
we're in the first inning right now.
Yes.
Yeah, like it's I started the company. I started Energy X 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago.
Wow.
And, now I have some of the biggest auto OEMs, like car manufacturers getting in touch with us, all the big battery cell manufacturers, all the biggest lithium producers, because, we've invented a really disruptive technology that it's kind of the paradigm of going from producing wood, like chopping down trees with a hand axe, to like a chainsaw. It's a huge transformational leap in technology that we've created, and the supply demand gap that is forthcoming with how much lithium is produced now to how much we're going to need is orders of magnitude. I mean, we produce about 300,000 tons per year of lithium today, like last year, and by 2040, we're going to need, by 2025, we're going to need 1.2 million tons per year.
Right.
So that's a 400% increase in the next 4 years. By 2040, we're going to need 5.5 million tons per year.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's an increase. And I mean, I suppose the thing is, and I mean, I don't know if you can answer this, but I mean, it isn't so much then that we don't have it. It's the speed at which we can process it. It's that it's not that it doesn't exist. There's I've spoken to quite a few people who work in minerals extraction and mining, and they're all going, no, there isn't a problem with the amount of nickel or copper. It's there. It's just getting it is always the problem. Same with cobalt.
And getting it fast and getting it
at a good cost. Yeah. So I mean, is the system you're using potentially the same cost as drying it in huge 10 square mile pans, or is it at the moment more expensive?
Way less.
It's way less, right?
Way less, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes a big difference. that makes you popular with people who are buying it.
Exactly.
And I mean, are there other areas of the world that you're thinking of extracting, that you're investigating to see if it can be extracted there? I mean, because I'm sort of aware of the kind of, I guess the Bolivian or the desert, the deserts in South America.
Yeah.
So that's the main place.
So that area is known as the Lithium Triangle.
Right.
And it's between southern Bolivia, northern Chile, and northern Argentina. Right. And it has such high concentration of lithium. And this is kind of just a geographic phenomenon over hundreds of millions of years. Like it's very similar to the Middle East for oil. Like the Middle East just has a lot of oil, because of
history.
Prehistoric evolution. And so in the Lithium Triangle, it's right on the Andes mountain range, which is the second largest mountain range in the world behind the Himalayas, right? Yeah. And all of these volcanic formations that formed this mountain range were high in lithium. And the way that it happens is, so the water falls on the mountain range and then has to find its way down to the ocean, right? Yeah. And it finds its way down to the Pacific Ocean. But along that path, in some areas it gets trapped, right?
Yeah.
And that's what created these prehistoric salt lakes that are thousands, tens of thousands. Like in Bolivia, Salar de Uyuni, which is the world's largest lithium reserve, is at like 13,000 feet of elevation.
Oh God! Wow, it's high. I never thought of that side to it. It's high up.
Yeah.
Wow, that is extraordinary.
Really?
That is high up.
So this is the world's largest salt flat. It's 4,000 square miles of just flat white.
Wow.
And it's the world's largest lithium reserve. It's dried up, and you can drive a car over it. It's like a crust.
Yeah.
The second largest salt flat in the world is actually the Bonneville Salt Flat in
the United States. So I've been there. I mean, we've actually filmed on two because they are the most extraordinary environments for a human being. You know, I think it's that I've felt the most alien. Like I really shouldn't be. I don't fit in here. There's nothing for me. Because I just remember standing in the middle of it. We were filming a TV show many years ago, standing in the middle of it, and my world was a white surface with a blue dome, and that was all there was. There was nothing else. You know?
And they do the world speed records there. It's so flat.
Yeah. No, it is extraordinary stuff. So are those deserts then in Bolivia a similar type if you were to stand on it? I mean, what I remember is this pristine white surface, and you stand on it, and it's like brown sugar. Immediately, it's a sort of, you break the little crust, the salt crust on the top.
It's even more pristine in Bolivia, though, because in Utah, it's a little brown because of the dust that comes.
Right.
In Bolivia, it's just pure white.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And is that hot then still at 13,000 feet? I would presume it's not as hot.
No, it's not hot. It's pretty cold, actually. I mean, the sun is heating.
So a lot of sun, but it's not because you're high up. It's a bit cooler. Yeah.
And the sun is the other really important thing here, because if you're using natural evaporation to precipitate and concentrate up the lithium, you need really high UV index.
Right.
Yeah. And you need very little rain.
And it's presumably got that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, so when you're extracting it, we're using. I mean, is it essentially reverse osmosis? Is that on a big scale the system you're using? Is it?
You can think about it like that. I mean, it's not exactly reverse osmosis. So reverse osmosis is using pressure to push seawater through a membrane. Yeah. And the membrane stops all the salt. Yeah. And then on the other side, you just have fresh water that's coming out. Right? And then you actually have to even remineralize it a little bit, or else it's just completely deionized water. Right. With us, we can't use pressure to push the brine through because it has such high salinity. Right. So ocean water is about 3% salinity, and because of that, you can just
squeeze it.
Pressure. Yeah. With us, we actually have to use, there's two ways to do it. One is using forward osmosis. So you use like a draw. So if you have a really concentrated or really high salinity solution on one side, and you have fresh water on the other, the concentration gradient actually allows the lithium to pass through, right? Right. That's very slow. Yeah. And we said we want it to be faster. So what we do is we actually use an electric potential. We use electricity to drive the brine through. And that's how the brine goes through the membrane. The membrane is lithium selective. Right. So the lithium passes through, all the rest gets rejected into a cross flow. Right.
Wow. So but to do that, then you need water and power, I presume.
We don't need that much water. Right. For just forward osmosis, you need water. And these places are actually very scarce in water. Yeah. They're like high deserts, but we do use electricity. Right. And it's not really that much. Well, if we were trying to produce fresh water, like using reverse osmosis, it would be considered a lot, but you have to realize here that a ton of fresh water costs like $10, right? So if you're using $8 of electricity per ton, that's very expensive. Yeah. For us, we're selling something that's worth $12,000 a ton. Right. So we use about $100 or $80 of electricity per ton of lithium. Right. in the overall cap stack, that's basically nothing.
No, I can understand the economics of this. It's not a big hit. But I mean, can you, I don't know, I'm just sort of, what I try and do is channel all the sort of slightly negative comments that I'm very aware of and used to on foot. Not negative comments, but the questioning. Wait a minute, is this good? But I mean, in terms of if you're in a high desert, which presumably doesn't have a lot of domestic dwellings, factories, can you generate your own power there? I guess that's the main thing. I mean, because it seems like such an obvious thing. There's a lot of solar.
There's natural gas.
Right.
You can use diesel. Ultimately, we would obviously prefer to use renewable energy. Like, it's very windy up in these areas.
Right.
And especially in Atacama and Chile, when you're driving to the regions that they have these salt flats, there's huge wind turbines.
Right.
So, and I mean, it's one of the sunniest places in the world. You can just do solar thermal. So
with solar and wind, I mean, I'm just,
yeah.
So, I mean, so at present then, have you got functioning systems installed, or are you still developing that? Or are you actually producing lithium now as a company?
We're deploying our first pilot plants this year.
Right.
So thus far, we've spent about 2 years developing this technology, and we have pilots that are in our lab that we're testing real world brine. So we work with some of the biggest lithium producers in the world, and they send us their real world brine.
Right. Oh, great.
And we're testing that on pilot facilities in our laboratory right now.
Right.
And then we'll containerize those pilots and ship them into the field for longer duration testing.
Right.
And that will happen this summer.
Oh, fantastic. And then, so are they on a relatively small scale to what you could do eventually? Is that the
Yeah. I mean,
path?
They're, to put it to scale, like, our pilot plants are 1/1000th the size of a commercial facility. Our first pilot plants.
I see. Right. Oh, right. Yeah.
So we'll test these small pilots, and they're in one shipping container on a concrete skid, and they'll sit right next to the evaporation ponds. We'll bring the brine in from the ponds, run it through our system, and then there's 2 streams that exit. One that's lithium enriched, one that's lithium depleted, that will recycle back to the last pond, so we don't lose any lithium.
Right.
And so that's the first pilot. The second kind of demonstration will be one full-size membrane stack, right? So our pilot system right now is like a small version of a stack.
Right.
But our second will be a full commercial stack. And our plan of go-to-market is to be modular and containerized, right?
Right.
Once we've tested one full-size stack, then it's just adding like another 100 or however many stacks they want, right?
And so the full size stack will fit in a container. That is,
we'll be able to fit like 10 full size stacks in one container.
Right.
And then you just ship down containers full of these commercial stacks, and you just keep adding, right?
Yeah.
So the company can say, hey, first I want to start out producing 5,000 tons a year of lithium, and we say, oh, well, that's 300 stacks.
Right.
And then that works, and they say, hey, I want to add another 1,000 stacks, right?
Right.
You just put down more stacks, and you just plug and play.
Yeah. And presumably, if you can do that, then the economies of manufacturing those, one, you don't have to do it in the field. You can manufacture them in a facility anywhere and ship them there, which is very useful. But then presumably, then your unit costs are reduced. If you're making 300 as opposed to 1, it's always cheaper, isn't it?
Yeah, and for us, actually, we're not even planning on being the manufacturer of this technology. We look at Energy X as just an energy technology company.
Right. We
want to partner with the best manufacturers in the world that already produce millions of square meters of membrane and all the other balance of plant, like crystallizers, evaporators, pipes, drivers, valves. So we partnered with Suez for that, and they'll manufacture everything because they have economies of scale at their factories, right? And they use our IP to do that. And then, we have a deal with them and with the producers.
So, I mean, in the long run then, I'm just thinking now from the point of view of the average, I don't like the word consumer, average human being that might use something. The potential is that because occasionally I glance at the graphs of a cost of particularly materials that are going into electric vehicle batteries, and they're generally on the up at the moment. And there's been this, and it's a fascinating thing to watch because I've been very aware, and I've met plenty of people who work in the industry, of the reduction in the cost of batteries per kilowatt hour to manufacture. It was a remarkable reduction over the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to see how that can continue with the increase in the price of cobalt, lithium. The price of lithium has gone up a lot, hasn't it? And nickel.
I think that there's a lot of things that go into making a battery. I mean, it's a vast supply chain, right? And the materials are kind of just one element of that supply chain, right? And I think that I'm sure you watch Tesla Battery Day, right?
Yes, yeah.
It kind of has these 5 areas. So once the battery manufacturer has the material, and maybe not even the battery manufacturer, you could just be talking about the cathode manufacturer, right? There's all these steps: making the anodes, making the cathodes, the securing the supply of the materials, and then putting it all together, and then doing battery modules into packs, the battery management system, like all these things go into it. So I thought one of the most interesting things from Battery Day about cutting, and he's analyzing this whole supply chain to try to cut the cost per kilowatt hour, which is ultimately the goal. One of the most interesting things that I thought Alon said was the way that they're planning on implementing the battery pack as a part of the car, similar to the airplane. Did you remember that part?
Yeah.
So like the wing itself is a fuel tank. You don't put a fuel tank into the wing, right? No. And that by itself cut out, like, it might have been double digits or high single digits on the price per kilowatt hour.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, you're absolutely right, because in fact, we were with an aircraft manufacturer the other day who described that exact thing, because they're talking about batteries and hydrogen fuel cells in aircraft. And they said, that isn't a wing. I was leaning on a wing of an aircraft in a hangar. He said, that's not a wing, that's a fuel tank. Yeah. Did you know that? That's what you build a fuel tank in a shape of a wing. And you go, oh, it's that way around. Exactly. I'd never heard that before. I kind of knew that fuel tanks were in wings, but I'd assumed you have a wing and then you jam a fuel tank in it. But you're absolutely right. It does it correlates to the batteries as well.
You build a chassis in the shape of a battery pack.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Or you build a battery pack in the shape of a chassis.
Yeah. But I suppose that is the certainly people who listen to this podcast are kind of aware of the big picture, but it is that realization which has come to me slowly over the last 10 years. When I first drove an electric car and I went, oh, this is interesting. I don't know why, I didn't know why anyone bothered. I said, I've got a car. It does it fly?
When you drove an electric car?
Yeah.
What year?
2000. Well, I had one from 2009. I had my first one here, a Mitsubishi i-MiEV.
Okay.
It's very nice little, I loved it. It was a great little car. Pretty regularly since then. And then, but what struck me, the two things that struck me was, one, where does the electricity come from? You sort of think of that suddenly. And, if I'm using electricity and then I must admit, I'd never really thought about where the gasoline came from until, which is ridiculous, because for one thing, I'd been driving for probably 40 years, buying it and complaining how expensive it was, but never thinking about where it came from or what my country had to do to maintain the supply, blah, 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 blah. But then also, I'd spent 2 days filming in an oil refinery for a TV show. You'd think it would dawn on me then. This is where, I was just interested in the actual science and the technology of it. It was fascinating. I mean, to see how much oil we use to make petrol. I mean, how much we burn, the heat. When you're in an oil refinery, what you're really aware of is how much heat there is, a lot of heat being used.
It's actually really ironic that you said that, because I've had my Tesla since 2013.
Right.
And it never dawned on me where the lithium in the battery came from.
Exactly. This is the point.
Until I stepped foot into Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia. And I'm on this tour, and my tour guide tells me, did you know this is the world's largest lithium reserve? And I was just like, oh my God.
And so you weren't there because of lithium. You were there as a tourist, or was that what you were just?
Yeah, as a tourist.
Right. Wow.
And I was there, and that's when it dawned on me, like,
yeah,
I'm standing in what could possibly be like the center of the electric vehicle revolution.
Yeah.
This is where all the world's lithium is coming from, and I'm standing right here.
Right.
And that's when I had my aha moment and decided to start the company.
Yeah. But I mean, so that I can't help having a bit of anxiety that just because of our history with places like Saudi Arabia or the Middle Eastern oil, is I mean, that as I understand it, that is where the majority of lithium is. But there are deposits on land. I mean, not including the sea. Are there deposits that are worthwhile exploiting in other areas of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Now that lithium is such a hot topic item, a lot of people are exploring and trying to find new sources of lithium, right? So just in the States, there's a couple. We have the Salton Sea, which has pretty good, it's all about the concentration of lithium, right? Which we talked about. And in the Salton Sea, there's a pretty high concentration in those geothermal brines.
Sorry, where is that? Where is that?
In California.
Oh, in California, right.
In California. And people are kind of calling that the Lithium Valley now.
Right.
So people are trying to exploit that. In Nevada is actually the only brine production, and that's run by Albemarle. It's in the place called the Clayton Valley.
Right.
There is hard rock lithium, and that's typically found in spodumene. There's some places in North Carolina, Piedmont Lithium and Albemarle are working on that.
Right.
There's some clay deposits that are in Utah and Nevada, and people are trying to, like Lithium Americas is looking at Thacker Pass up there. And then there is some lithium, but a little bit lower concentration, like 100 ppms, which is really kind of the floor of the concentration it needs to be economic.
Right.
In produced water. So one of the biggest expenses for fracking for oil and gas is produced water. And big oil and gas companies are actually looking at extracting some of this lithium if it's high enough concentration from that. And in Texas and Arkansas, Standard Lithium is in Arkansas looking at that.
So wait a minute, because I need to understand a few things there. So I don't know what standard water is. What do you call it? Standard water?
Produced water.
Produced water. So is that water that was clean when they pumped it into the fracking well and comes out with stuff in it? Or, no, right.
Produced water is what comes up when you are fracking for oil and gas. So when you're fracking, you go down with the oil rig, and that fracking is the process of going out, right?
Yes.
Like kind of horizontal.
Yeah.
And when they do that, just a ton of more water comes up. So they'll bring up a barrel of oil or gas, and you can have upwards of 20 barrels of produced water for every single barrel of oil and gas. And it's actually the biggest expense for the oil and gas companies.
Is dealing with that water. Wow.
Yeah. And there's companies that they pay to just wheel it off, to take it off and then re-inject it.
Wow. But so, God, I'm so confused about that. That is an aspect of fracking I wasn't aware of. So because my understanding of fracking is you drill down and then and the drilling technology is extraordinary, and you then drill sideways.
Yeah.
I had assumed, but then to frack the rock, you're then pumping fluids in under enormous pressure to cause to crack the shale. So I'd assumed that any liquid that was down there was because we'd pumped it down there. But you're saying it's
just groundwater.
Yeah. Wow. Which is slightly alarming from the point of view of if you are reliant on groundwater and your groundwater can get involved in fracking, which is what they always say. No, it doesn't affect the groundwater. Yeah. It clearly does a bit.
A bit.
But then that is extraordinary then. So that water can contain small amounts of lithium. I mean, it sounds like a very small amounts of lithium, but that it is.
Yeah, it ranges. It's not just like the same everywhere, right?
No.
Some can be 40, some could be 150, but one of the companies we're working with has about an average of 100 ppms, and that's attractive. Yeah,
so you can extract that. So in fact, anyone who drives an electric car should be pro-fracking.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, but all those aspects are fascinating, and I suppose my frustration is that I managed to live in the world quite happily without any knowledge of the true impact and the complexity of the fuel that we all relied on. I mean, we live in a world that is absolutely built on fossil fuel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's everything that we can do and everything.
Whole society.
Yeah. And I mean, to transition from reliant on that, to being reliant on that.
That's why we're in the first inning right now.
Yeah. I mean, the more you understand it, the more you go, oh my God, we barely chipped the paint on a super tanker. Because we've got like one fingernail under one bit of paint, and there's this huge thing. It's such a colossal task. I mean, do you feel that it is a possibility to say, I mean, and I'll be generous, in the next 100 years for the human race to wean themselves off, it's not even using fossil fuels, I don't think, it's burning fossil fuels to do everything we need.
Yeah, 100 years is such a long time. Yeah. We can do anything in 100 years.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely anything.
I just want to put that's a beautifully American, and I mean this in a positive way, American attitude, because there's people in this country go, no, you can't change anything, it's too late.
Yeah. I think we can do it.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Like, 10, 20, 30 years, probably.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just in the terms of the last 10, the change that's happened particularly in this country in the last 10 years, because those are things I've because the show has been going for 10 years, I sort of went back and looked at what was going on in 2010 when I started doing it. It's been 11 years now. And I mean, for instance, we were in the UK, 40% of our electricity over the year was from coal. And I didn't know it was.
Now how much is from coal?
It's less than 1%.
Exactly.
Less than 1%, yeah. And it will, within 2 years, it will be nothing at all. I mean, they're closing down they're uneconomic. It's absolutely to do with economics. It's nothing else.
It's the only thing, right? And the more investment that goes into sustainability and renewable energy are going to drive the economics to an even better place than they are right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it already costs less to have like solar and wind, like generation. Right now, we need to focus on the energy storage, which is kind of the last remaining bottleneck.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it's so obvious when you do that. And it's not in here. I've just been reading a book by he's been on the podcast, Mark Jacobson, about, which is the sort of plan of how you become 100% solar, wind, storage, those three.
Yeah.
And he didn't go, this would work. Now, I would be able to go far. Look, if we have solar panels and wind turbines and some big batteries, that everything would be wonderful. You go, how much do we need to store? And it is petawatts of power around for the whole world.
How much like R&D capital has gone into battery technology until just 10 years ago, basically zero.
Yeah, very, very little. Yeah.
And compare that to like other big industry like fossil fuels or pharmaceuticals. Some of these pharmaceutical companies, 15% of their budget is R&D.
Yeah.
New pharmaceuticals. And that's why it's come so far. I think that in the next 10, 20 years, battery technology, we're gonna have so much battery technology that we're gonna have enough energy that can run the entire planet for years, and we would never even need to get more.
Yeah, yeah. No, I do think you're right. I mean, the stuff that's frustrating for us this year is we've got invitations to go and see battery laboratories where they have carbon on carbon batteries, aluminium air batteries, all those things. We have been to some of them before. One at Oxford, in fact. The Oxford University department where the lithium-ion battery was developed in the 1970s, and no one wanted it. And then some man from Sony came over and went, "These would be good for our cameras."
I don't know if you knew this, but we're actually partnered with Dr. John Goodenough.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. He's such an
partner on our battery initiative.
He is such an extraordinary man. I've never met him, but I mean, I sort of know of his work very well. I mean, his age to still be interested and enthusiastic, I think is, what a role model. I'm hoping I'll be like that when I'm his age. I mean, that is extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, we partnered with him a year ago, and we worked with a few of his PhD students.
Right.
And he's super involved. He is on one of our new patents. He gives advice like. Before the pandemic, he was at the University of Texas every day.
Wow!
At 98 years old.
Because what age is he?
He's 98.
He's not. That's right. Sorry, I was going to say he's late. He's 98. That 98. Is fantastic.
At work every day.
Every day. That
Every day.
says a lot about retirement plans and pensions, doesn't it? I mean, I think it's going to become a lot more common. You know, I can't, because I was asked recently, you know, when do you think you're going to retire? And I went, I don't know how to do that. I'd be bored. You know, I'm quite enjoying what I'm doing. I mean, it's that blessing of, I think I can see that in you. You know, if you enjoy what you're doing and it makes you get up in the morning and go, oh my God, how on earth are we going to solve this problem? Yeah. That's good. That keeps you going. Yeah. So where is Energy X based? Are you based in California then? I got very confused when you mentioned Turkey.
So our corporate headquarters are in Puerto Rico.
Right.
And then we're based out of both Austin, Texas, and Silicon Valley. We have labs in both.
Right.
We're consolidating and building our own lab in Austin, Texas.
Oh, fantastic. Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be a 15,000 square foot innovation lab. We're expanding our team. Right now we have 15 team members. We're tripling up to about 50, and they'll all be housed in this lab in Texas.
Wow, that is amazing. Because I mean, our last live show, because we do live shows here, mate, we've done them in the past. It was in Austin, Texas.
Nice.
And we're doing one with a bit of luck, you know, a lot of fingers crossed, next year in March, I think, April time. In Austin, Texas. So the invitation stands. Please do. You know, it'd be great to have you on a panel or talking about what you're doing. You know, as well, you're a local. But I loved it. I was in Austin about a year ago, just before the lockdown, and it was just it was an amazing place to be. I think because you know, our European, if you like, knowledge of Texas is limited. It's Dallas, it's cowboys, it's beef. I knew it was wind turbines because I'd seen lots of stuff about it. But, you know, that you sort of don't think of it as being a tech hub or an innovation hub. But Austin, it just blew me away. What's going on in Austin is remarkable.
You have every big company, like Texas is building their new or Tesla is building their new gigafactory in Austin. You have Amazon headquarters is there. Qualcomm just moved. There's Facebook offices. There's Apple. I mean, every major tech company is moving to Austin.
Yeah. No, I can understand why. When you're there, you go, oh, this is all right. It's quite nice. We went shopping. It was lovely. But so I'm really looking forward to coming back there. That is fantastic. But the thing is, what you're actually doing is global, isn't it? It's not, you know, you're not extracting lithium in Austin, Texas. That's all over the place.
That's where we're manufacturing the technology.
Yeah. That's great. And I mean, have you got plans then? Presumably, you're not, as a company, not locked into just lithium. Are you involved in other areas?
Yeah, I mean, so lithium is our signature flagship product and lithium extraction technology. But we're exploring solid state batteries, and that's the partnership that we have with Dr. Goodenough.
Right.
And then, you know, our technology is really at the core of it, a separations-based technology.
Yeah.
We're using that for lithium first because of how important lithium is as a battery material. But we can actually apply our technology to an array of other rare earth minerals.
Right.
But that's a little bit down the line.
Right. But I mean, in theory, then, could you be involved in recycling batteries? Could you be involved in separating materials in existing batteries?
Absolutely.
Right. That is very interesting because I think that's going to be a massive part of the the coming technological revolution. Yeah, I mean that is because that is the one argument when I have discussions with people who are very keen on fossil fuels. Because it's always, they'll always go for, but your batteries just get thrown into landfill. And you're going, well, really, would you throw away really valuable materials into landfill? No, you wouldn't. And I say, look, whatever happens, just show me. I'll change my mind completely. Show me 1 liter of recycled diesel.
Yeah, right.
Please. And I mean, however complicated and difficult
that silences them pretty quick.
Yes. I mean, however complicated it is to recycle a battery, it's easier than recycling a liter of diesel that you've burnt in a truck.
Exactly.
Teague, I mean, I'm just really impressed with what you're doing. I wish you all possible success with it, and I really hope it's a big success. And I mean, please do, if we're allowed to meet, please do come to Fully Charged. I mean, I'll be in touch with it about Fully Charged Live next year.
I'd love to.
In Austin. We're very excited.
I feel like the vaccines are really, moving along nicely. So I'm getting mine next week, actually. So.
Oh, good. Yeah. No, I'm halfway through. I've had my first one, and we're waiting for my second. Now, I mean, I've just heard today, it's a bit of a shock with our government, who have shown quite colossal ineptitude in the early stages of what we had to deal with, have been remarkable. I've got to hand it to them. They've done now just coming up to 27 million vaccinations in this country. Wow. So half the adult population has already been done, which is extraordinary feat of logistics, if nothing else. When I went to get mine, it was so quick. I was thinking, I'll tweet about it to say I'm having I didn't have time. I was in, boom, out. Oh. Nice. It's a kind of industrial process. It's extraordinary. Yeah. Oh, well, yes. I mean, we have to be optimistic to think that, this time next year we will be on aeroplanes and traveling around and doing things. Yeah. Anyway, brilliant, Teague. Thank you so much. Really good to talk to you,
Robert. Really appreciate you having me.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed that. It was a fascinating conversation to talk to Teague. He's an extraordinary man. We're definitely going to get him to come. We are going to frog march him to the stage at Fully Charged Live in Austin, Texas in 2022. What an amazing guy. What an incredible load of technology he's working on. Really exciting stuff for the future. But in fact, by the time we are in Austin, Texas next year, he will have, been, I'm sure, moved on a great deal with this, the development of this company. So definitely worth keeping an eye on. Energy X, coming to you all over the world to produce cheaper, finer, better lithium. Okay, that's all. I can't even bother to talk about subscribing. All I want to say to you is you're all wonderful. Thank you for listening. And I can't say the end bit now because I've said thank you for listening. As always, if you have been, I'll just repeat it. If you have been, thank you for listening.